Namaste everyone, welcome back to Physio Vitals. I am Dr. Ankita Savan. I am back with the topic on lungs now. So what is lung? It is a vital organ which is responsible for gas exchange. Okay, so it is comprised of two spongy cone-shaped organ which is located in the chest cavity and is responsible for obtaining oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. First we'll see the anatomy of the lungs. So first we have the uppermost part, trachea. The trachea, what is trachea? It is a cartilaginous tube that carries the air from the nose and mouth to the lungs. It is also called as windpipe in layman language. Then bronchi. The trachea branches into two bronchi, right and left, on each side of the each lungs. Okay, so the right bronchi is more vertical than the left. Hence, whenever the particles or the food is aspirated, anything is aspirated, there is a more possibility of that particular substance to get entered in the right lung. Okay, so because of this anatomical structure, the right bronchi is more vertical than the left. So it is further divided into bronchioles. Okay, so each bronchi is further divided into bronchioles according to the bronchopulmonary segments, which we'll see. Now, alveoli. The bronchioles end in tiny air sac called alveoli. These bronchi are further divided into the tiny air sacs, जिसको हम alveoli कहते हैं, which is called as alveoli, where gas exchange occurs between the air and the blood stream. Okay. Now, physiology of the lungs. So what is the function? Inspiration, expiration, gas exchange. Now inspiration is a process of breathing air. Okay, so it is an active process. Actively we have to inhale the air. During inspiration the diaphragm contracts, okay, and the rib cage is expanded, which creates a negative pressure in the lungs, and the air is drawn into the lungs. Okay, so it is an active process. Diaphragm contracts, rib cage expands, there is a negative pressure, vacuum is created and the air is descended. Whereas expiration is an passive process. Okay, so here the breathing out of air is happening in expiration. So during expiration the diaphragm relaxes, rib cage again recoils back to its normal position, increases the lung pressure, and the air is forced out. Okay, the reverse of inspiratory uh, process ka reverse of the inspiratory process. So in expiration, obviously the diaphragm is relaxing, rib cage is recoiling back, there is positive pressure, and then air is forced out. Next is gas exchange. Very deep this process is happening. So gas exchange occurs in the alveoli. Very deep that structures alveoli which we just covered in the structure anatomy of the lungs. So these alveoli are responsible for gas exchange, where the oxygen from the inhaled air diffuses into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide from the blood diffuses into the alveoli to be exhaled by this process which we just discussed by expiration. Okay. Next, respiratory system functions. So gas exchange. The primary function of the lung is gas exchange, bringing oxygen into the body and removing the carbon dioxide. Okay. Then regulation of blood's pH. Lung helps regulate blood pH by controlling the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood. If the carbon dioxide is excess, hypercapnia, then the pH will not be maintained. That's the reason how the pH is maintained in the blood, by controlling the amount of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is a major contributor to the blood's acidity. Okay. Now voice production. Lung provides the airflow needed for speech. So for speech we need that airflow which is provided by the lungs. Air is exhaled through the vocal cords in the larynx to produce the sound. Then protection. The respiratory system has several defense mechanisms such as cilia, mucus, to trap and remove the foreign particles from the inhaled air. See, whenever we breathe, there is a cilia and mucoid lining over the tracheal. For example, if this is the left trachea and we see here the right trachea, bronchus. So this cilia are the finger-like projections. Not exactly they are connected, the finger-like projections. So as the air enters the dust, if there is any dust particle, it gets bind with the cilia and mucus. So mucus traps and cilia also traps it, and the filtered air gets entered to the lungs. Okay, so this is the area where the cilia or the cilia and the mucus works. Okay, so that was all about the protection. So it traps and removes the foreign particle. Ventilation and gas exchange. Inspiration. Air enters the lungs as the diaphragm contracts, which we saw, negative pressure, and the chest cavity expands. Basically, inspiration is all about negative pressure. Next is alveolar ventilation. Air reaches the alveoli, very deepest layer. Okay, alveoli, where gas exchange takes place. So where oxygen is diffused into the surrounding capillaries and carbon dioxide is diffused outside now. The expiratory process will do the needful now. Now expiration. The diaphragm relaxes, the cavity shrinks, positive pressure comes, air is exhaled, carrying carbon dioxide out of the body, which is a passive process. Expiration is passive, inhalation is active process. Lung volumes and capacities. So very important. Tidal volume, it's the amount of air inhaled or exhaled in a normal breath. It is 500 ml approximately. Inspiratory reserve volume, the additional amount of air that can be inhaled after a normal inhalation. Okay, so additional amount of air which is inhaled after a normal inhalation is called as inspiratory reserved volume. Now, the additional amount of air that can be exhaled after a normal exhalation is called expiratory reserved volume. Now, the amount of air that remains in the lungs after a maximum exhalation is called residual volume, the amount which is staying back. Okay, for example, if you have inhaled 1000 ml and you are just expirating 800 ml, the 200 ml which is still inside is called the residual volume. Now the applied anatomy. Thoracic cavity. The lungs occupy the thoracic cavity, which is enclosed by the ribs, surrounded by the ribs, anteriorly sternum, and inferior side we have diaphragm. Now pleura. The lungs are covered by a thin membrane called pleura, which helps lubricate the lungs and allows them to expand and contract smoothly. Then diaphragm. It is a muscle that separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. So see the demarcation here, diaphragm, liver, stomach, intestine. So it separates the proximal and the distal cavity. It separates basically the thoracic cavity to the abdominal cavity. So it contracts and relaxation are crucial for breathing. If just imagine if the diaphragm is paralyzed due to phrenic nerve is supplied to the diaphragm. So if the diaphragm is paralyzed, there is no negative pressure occurring. There will be so much disruption in the normal physiology of the lung. Person will not be able to inhale, exhale. So all the BiPAP ventilation and all is required for such patients. So see how important this particular muscle is. Now clinical relevance and pathologies. So very important, pneumonia. It is an infection of the lungs that causes inflammation and fluid buildup. So in X-ray, pneumonia, LRTIs and all are the main causes. For that, X-ray, chest X-ray is needed. Asthma. It is a chronic lung disease that causes inflammation and narrowing of the airspace. So there is bronchoconstriction in the airspace. Okay, so if any person has asthma, all the pets and dust, air purifier should be there. Pets should not be there at house. Regular dusting should be there. All that precautions needs to be taken care. Even diet plays a very important role in such cases. Next, lung cancer. uncontrolled growth of the abnormal cells in the lungs, often caused by the smoking. So due to prolonged smoking, we all know the lungs become darker, and there is abnormal, a cell growth happening, which leads to the lung cancer. Emphysema. It is a disease that causes the damage to the alveoli, leading to shortness of breath and difficulty breathing. So any pathology in the alveoli where the gas exchange takes place, so there will be shortness of breath and difficulty in breathing. So that was all about the lungs, the structural anatomy, physiology, volumes and capacities. Then we saw clinical applied anatomy, clinical relevance. So I hope you liked the video. It was informative for y'all to get an gist about the topic. So just like, share and subscribe. We will be covering more such videos in coming future. So stay tuned for that. Till then, God bless you all. Keep learning. Thank you.